Hello, devotees. Welcome back to Divine Wisdom Explained, your place for uncovering deep truths and life lessons from the timeless stories of the Bible. If you're joining us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe and give us a thumbs up if these insights speak to you. Today we're exploring a story of unwavering faith, steadfast obedience, and divine mercy. Noah's Ark, the last voyage. Let's dive in. Noah's Ark, the last voyage. The wickedness of the world. The story of Noah and the Ark is one of the most well-known tales in the Bible. It is a story of judgment, grace, and renewal. But it all began with a world that had fallen far from the good creation God had originally designed. In the book of Genesis, God had created a perfect world full of beauty, order, and life. Humanity, made in His image, was placed in the garden to live in harmony with Him and the earth. However, as time passed, humanity turned away from God. People began to follow their own desires, and their hearts became filled with wickedness and corruption. Genesis 6 verses 5 to 6 describes this grim reality. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of the human heart was only evil all the time. The Lord regretted that He had made human beings on the earth, and His heart was deeply troubled. Genesis 6 verses 5 to 6 NIV. God looked upon the earth and saw that it had become utterly corrupt. Violence filled the land and sin was rampant. This broke God's heart, for He had created humanity for good, yet they chose to live in rebellion. God, in His holiness and justice, could no longer tolerate such evil. He decided that He would send a great flood to destroy all life on earth, cleansing it of the corruption that had spread. But there was one man who found favor in God's eyes: Noah. Noah's faithful obedience. Noah was described as a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time. While the rest of the world was filled with violence and immorality, Noah walked with God. His faith was evident in his obedience, and because of his righteousness, God chose him to carry out a task that would preserve life on earth and give humanity a second chance. Genesis 6 verses 8 to 9 tells us, "But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord." This is the account of Noah and his family. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. Genesis 6 verses 8 to 9 NIV. God spoke to Noah and gave him specific instructions. He told Noah to build an enormous ark, a massive boat, large enough to hold Noah, his family, and pairs of every kind of animal on earth. The ark was to be made of cypress wood and covered inside and out with pitch to make it waterproof. God also gave Noah the exact measurements of the ark, which were staggering. It was to be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. That was a massive undertaking, especially considering Noah had no experience in shipbuilding and the world had never seen such a flood. Yet Noah did not question or delay. He obeyed God's command without hesitation. He gathered the materials and began building the ark, even though he had never seen rain and likely faced ridicule from others. People in Noah's time had never experienced such a flood, and Noah's actions must have seemed absurd to them. But Noah remained steadfast in his faith and trust in God's word. The animals enter the ark. As Noah worked on the ark, he also prepared for the flood by gathering animals. God instructed Noah to bring 2 of every kind of animal, one male and one female, into the ark to preserve their species. This was an incredible task, as Noah had to gather all the animals that walked on the earth, flew in the sky, and crawled on the ground. God gave Noah a specific time frame. 7 days before the floodwaters came, Noah was to gather the animals and his family. The Bible tells us that God Himself guided the animals to the ark. In Genesis 7 verse 9 it says, "The animals going in were male and female of every living thing as God had commanded Noah." Then the Lord shut him in. Genesis 7 verse 9 NIV. Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives entered the ark, along with the animals. They were all safely shut in by God himself, preparing for the deluge that was about to come, the great flood. After Noah and the animals entered the ark, the flood came. For 40 days and 40 nights, it rained without ceasing. The waters rose, covering the earth and even the highest mountains. All life outside the ark perished. The flood was not just a natural disaster. It was God's judgment upon the wickedness of humanity. Genesis 7 verses 17 to 20 describes the magnitude of the flood. For 40 days the flood kept coming on the earth, and as the waters increased, they lifted the ark high above the earth. The waters rose and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. They rose greatly on the earth, and all the high mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 20 feet. Genesis 7 verses 17 to 20 NIV. For over a month and a half the earth was submerged. Noah, his family, and the animals were safe in the ark, floating above the water, waiting for the judgment to pass. During this time, Noah's faith in God was tested. He didn't know how long they would be in the ark or when the waters would recede. But Noah trusted that God had a plan, and he continued to wait in obedience. The waters recede. After 150 days of being on the water, God sent a wind to blow over the earth, and the waters began to recede. The ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat, Genesis 8 verse 4, but the earth was still covered in water. To find out if the earth was dry, Noah sent out a raven which flew back and forth, but could find no place to land. Then Noah sent out a dove. The dove returned with an olive leaf, signaling that the waters had receded enough for plant life to begin growing again. 7 days later, Noah sent the dove out again, and this time it did not return, signaling that the earth was dry. Genesis 8 verses 15 to 19 recounts the moment Noah and his family finally left the ark. Then God said to Noah, "Come out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons and their wives. Bring out every kind of living creature that is with you, the birds, the animals, and all the creatures that move along the ground, so they can multiply on the earth and be fruitful and increase in number on it." Genesis 8 verses 15 to 17 NIV. Noah and his family emerged from the ark, and the earth began to be repopulated with life. The covenant of the rainbow. After the flood waters had completely receded, Noah and his family offered sacrifices to God as an act of gratitude. God, pleased with their worship, made a promise. He would never again destroy the earth with a flood. To seal this promise, God gave Noah a covenant, and the rainbow became the symbol of this covenant. Genesis 9 verses 13 to 16 states, "I have set my rainbow in the clouds, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and the rainbow appears in the clouds, I will remember my covenant between me and you and all living creatures of every kind. Never again will the waters become a flood to destroy all life." Genesis 9 verses 13 to 15 NIV. The rainbow became a reminder to both God and humanity of His mercy and faithfulness. Even when storms come, the rainbow stands as a symbol of hope, signifying that God will keep His promises. Moral lessons from Noah's Ark, the last voyage. 1. Obedience to God's commands. The story of Noah is a powerful reminder that obedience to God can often seem difficult or unpopular, but it is always the right choice. Noah's obedience saved not only his own life but the lives of his family and countless animals. When we trust and obey God, we align ourselves with His will and purposes, even if the world doesn't understand. 2. God's judgment and mercy. God's judgment is real, and the flood was a picture of His wrath against sin. However, this story also shows God's mercy. Despite the wickedness of the world, Noah and his family were spared because of their righteousness. God always provides a way of escape for those who trust in Him. 3. Faith in God's plan. Noah had to wait for many months in the ark, not knowing when the flood would end. But he trusted in God's plan and waited patiently. The story teaches us the importance of trusting in God's timing, even when we don't understand what He's doing. 4. The covenant of hope. The rainbow is a reminder of God's covenant with humanity, a promise that He will never again destroy the earth with a flood. It symbolizes hope and that God keeps His promises. Even in the midst of trials and storms, we can trust that God's promises will always stand. Conclusion. Noah's Ark is more than just a story about a flood. It's a story about faith, obedience, and the faithfulness of God. It teaches us that even in times of great judgment, God provides mercy. And when we remain faithful to Him, He will preserve us through the storms of life. The rainbow, a symbol of God's covenant, reminds us that we can trust His promises and find hope in His faithfulness. Thank you for joining us today on Divine Wisdom Explained as we explored the story of Noah's Ark, the last voyage. We hope you've been inspired to live in obedience to God's Word and to trust in His promises. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. May God's wisdom continue to guide you. See you next time.